So here we go into round 3 of Tier 1 F1WL, and just a quick recap. The first 2 races were won by the Red Bull driver of VLX Shui, and he won them quite convincingly with fastest laps in both races, so he now leads the championship by a rather commanding margin, and his teammate Jer hasn't quite been as commanding, but has definitely shown signs of Red Bull team and AlphaTauri dominance. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. As immediately off the bat, we see Shui out to set a first, maybe banker, who knows, followed by High 101 in the McLaren with the new McLaren livery, which does look pretty nice, I must admit. This will be probably a haven for mistakes, because this track with only one DRS zone, it might be difficult for overtaking, and if people get a bit, oh, there's already a bit of a mistake there from the McLaren. So as people maybe get a bit sick of being behind other drivers, they might just get a bit I don't know, maybe annoyed, and then that can lead to mistakes, and mistakes can lead to safety cars, and then that spices the race up a bit. So I'm excited for this one. It'll be interesting to see if Shui can continue his dominance, and he will be the first across the line to start a lap, as we only have one Haas driver, one Williams driver, and there is in fact an Alfa Romeo driver. I was told there wasn't, so they've come out of nowhere. I didn't notice. There's 2 Williams drivers actually as well, which I apparently am very wrong. Yellow's in sector 3. Is that DJ? It isn't. I'm not sure what that was about, as we see Shui heading through the first sector, and I need to put someone's out in the intermediates. Okay, I mean, sure, why not? Definitely an interesting choice to go out on the intermediates. But yeah, yellows as people get out their way in sector 3. Shui heading through into the sector 2. It's probably a banker. Be interesting to see how much curb he takes. He's very, very generous on the exit of Aqua Mineral as he heads up to Variante Alta. More curb, and of course he goes purple because he's the first to set a time, and he heads down into Ravazza 1 and through Ravazza 2. It's very clean from the Red Bull driver, no clear mistake from what we saw, and as he runs up to the line, he puts in a 1:15.2, and behind him, DJ up to the line, a 1:15.7, so 5 tenths off already. I don't know if DJ maybe had a mistake or just was just going for a slightly smoother banker, as the AlphaTauri of Bram sets the time faster than Mercedes, but still a way off of the Red Bull, and the McLaren clearly made a mistake probably on that lap, or just didn't really get his tyres up to temperature, because he's quite a way off, and the Alpine of Sheehan also quite a way off, as the second Red Bull only sets a time good enough for 4th out of the 6 drivers that have set times. He probably made a mistake on that lap as well, to be almost a second off his teammate. So as we see, Turbo Man aborts that lap, and who's that? I think that was Joel in the Ferrari round, as another lap is aborted, and I think these will also be pitting. Yep. as everyone just retreats back into the pits after that first run and just composes themselves again to go again. And there are a couple who, and yeah, Procan hasn't set a time and will probably go again. He's 13 seconds down on that lap, so clearly he must have just been getting out of the way or made probably a big mistake, but he will go again immediately and quite clean through the first chicane as he heads into the Villeneuve chicane, I believe, and up into a corner that I should know the name of and I cannot remember, as it's still quite clean from the Williams driver, who is in the Williams because I'm not quite sure if he's meant to be in the Aston Martin or not, but we'll go with it as he heads down through the Aqua Mineral, gets a decent enough exit, doesn't take as much curb on the exit as the Red Bull of Shui did, which may just show the gap between the two drivers, but that is a stonking sector from Procan as he goes purple, and maybe that, oh hang on, technical issues, as I've absolutely ruined my headset. But he goes out of the second Ravazza, up to the line, DRS enabled, and that time was actually not as good as I figured it would be. That's a bit of a shame. That is a shame, because a purple sector 2 and then elsewhere it just didn't come together for him. And here's the AlphaTauri out of the second Ravazza, up to the line, goes 5th fastest, ahead of the second Red Bull driver of GR13, as everyone else really is on outlaps or in-laps after the first push runs. They're out for a second bite at the cherry. And I'm going to try and fill you in on the current championship standings, because, you know, it'll be very interesting to note as there isn't a lot going on. Apart from the fact that DJ Perks starts a new lap, and behind him the two McLarens are also about to start their new laps. Again, very clean through the first chicane. He doesn't take as much curve on the exit out of the first chicane, which makes me think that maybe it was a bit slower than he would have wanted. Little bit of a snap as he goes wide, and that's pretty much his lap run, because he's got gravel on them tyres and he's going to have to recharge and go again. It's a bit of a shame for the Mercedes, because he's going to want to get a couple of good runs in just to get a feel of the track before sprint race, because obviously we've got quali and then sprint race and then the feature race for you, so trust me, this is going to get interesting. As that's a purple second sector from the McLaren of High 101, so he's beaten the purple second sector we saw set by Procan, which then makes me think maybe Shui didn't get the middle sector he was hoping for, and that he is yet to improve further, and he could quite improve further. There's a lot of mud on that McLaren. It's gone on some adventure, I think, and yet he crosses the line and doesn't really improve, but his McLaren teammate up to P4, so could be a good qualifying for McLaren if it stays this way. But there are still 4 drivers yet to set times, and the Mercedes of Oero is yet to set a really representative time. But Oero does set a representative time and goes up to P4. He gets P4 for his efforts, so we see now the Ferrari of Jack Ledford, who is up on this lap, goes to P2 and only 500ths off of the Red Bull. So just maybe Jack Ledford could be the driver to take it to the Red Bull, just like, oh, that's a bit of an off from the Ferrari. He could be the driver to take it to the Red Bulls, just like he was last time out. As Jer puts a lap in that puts him P3 and cements his, just proves that he should be in that Red Bull seat alongside Shuey. As further down we had the Haas of Matt Copper set the time, which wasn't really too impressive, and Super Mario also posted a time which wasn't quite interesting enough to trouble the top 10 too much either. So up to the line with the Red Bull of Shuey, as he goes 2/10 and a bit faster, and that is another benchmark set by a Red Bull that looks very difficult to beat for the Ferrari in P2, as the Ferrari goes out of the second Ravazza and into the pits, and the AlphaTauri of Bram goes around presumably to set a lap because he's on a 5-minute 36 lap. That is impressively slow from the first AlphaTauri, and he's just too far ahead to give his teammate in the second AlphaTauri a nice tow down the only DRS straight, as he almost gets held up by Joel, who comes out of the pits just beside him. As up to the line we have the Williams who pits, followed by, oh no, the Alpine who pits, followed by possibly the second Williams who pits. It is indeed. And Shuey in the third sector on a slower lap. So we'll go with the AlphaTauri of Bram, who is up on this lap, and the AlphaTauri of De Jong, who also may be up on this lap as well. It'd be interesting to see how, and there's another purple second sector set by Bram, which proves that clearly some people can just pull a nice second sector out, but just get the first and third sectors a little bit wrong. Maybe the Ravazzas or the Villeneuve chicane proving a little bit too difficult to get right at the same time and to put the perfect lap together. But the AlphaTauri up to the line, and he goes P3, so a minor improvement was enough to put him, and his teammate, I wasn't quite fast enough to cycle down to him, but his teammate takes his position in P3 with an even better lap. So this is the Red Bull Academy dominance has been asserted already with 5 minutes to go in this qualifying session. Red Bull from Ferrari, from AlphaTauri, from AlphaTauri, from Red Bull. And this might not be as interesting as a race as I said it would be 10 minutes ago. So a little standings update as the drivers prepare to go out on their final runs. Shuey is 24 points ahead of the next fastest driver, who can't make this race, and having said that, neither of the main AlphaTauris are at this race. So Bram and De Jong are both filling in. One presumably as a reserve and the other maybe from the Red Bull reserve. So, but they're making a good cause as to possibly being the main drivers at AlphaTauri. Although the main drivers at AlphaTauri currently sit P2 and P4 in the championship, and the two main Red Bull drivers sit P1 and P3. So it is very much a Red Bull Academy lockout, with the Haas of BRT Jacob, who also isn't at this race, in P5, and then followed by one of the Mercs, one of the Alpines, and then the second Merc. But the first Merc is just not here anymore, as in he's not driving in the league anymore. So his seat has been filled by Oero, who might hope to just cement his place and ensure that there's no doubt as to his skill. And he has done that, matching his teammate very, very almost at the start of this qualifying, as he goes up to the line to start his fast lap. And down into the chicane of turn 1 we go. Tamburello, he gets it quite well. Takes a good amount of curb, gets a very good slingshot into the Villeneuve chicane. Gets that right as well. No gravel on the exit like his teammate, and up through Tosa. Takes a lot of curb again, as there's yellows in sector 3 for a Ferrari or an Alfa Romeo who might be round, but that might not affect him yet. That looked very, very close to track limits from the Mercedes as he heads down into Aqua Mineral. Takes enough curb, as much curb as the Red Bull did, as he goes up to Variante Alta. Can he keep it clean through there as he sets purple middle sector, taking it off of the many other people who've set purple middle sectors so far in this session, as he heads down into the Ravazza 1. I'm not sure if it is really Ravazza 1 or is it just Ravazza as the 2 corners, but out of the second Ravazza, and that is still very, he's on the limit as he goes up to the line. DRS enabled, he goes P2. That is an impressive lap from the Mercedes, as he completely upsets the Red Bull lockout. And up to the line, this is one of the Williams. No, it's not. Oh, it is one of the Williams. Goes to set a fast lap. And we have one of the McLarens on to set a fast lap as well. Followed by the other McLaren, one of the Red Bulls, and the Haas of Matt Copper. Turboman yet to set a lap in this race, also on just starting a flyer. But up to the line we have Sheehan, who's on an invalid lap, and DJ, who is on maybe a decent lap. Up to the line, an improvement, but not an improvement to gain a position. And I've gone from saying that the Merc has matched his teammate to the Merc smashing his teammate out of the park as it stands. Up to the line we have the Alfa Romeo, who doesn't improve but starts a new lap, and the Alpha Tauris again. No improvements from either of them as they go to set fast laps in the last 16 seconds. So to the flag we have High will get to set a faster lap. He does set a faster lap, but not quite enough to match his teammate. Mitwi gets to set a faster lap as well. He might go again anyway as he's got the flag, but these have not met the flag, which is the Williams of Super Mario, the Haas of Matt Copper, is that Joel in the Ferrari, and then Turboman didn't meet the flag, so they will not play any more part in this qualifying. But the Aston Martin got himself up to P8 on the one representative lap he did. As we see DJ up to the line, no improvement, and he is also out of qualifying. And that's a 5-place grid penalty for Procan for a collision with, and that's an interesting incident that's gone down. As we have, I think, the Red Bull over the line spins, and that is a P2 from the Alpha Tauri out of nowhere. I was not expecting that. And the Alpha Tauri again puts in a good time to just hang on. What's gone on here? As we have the Haas everyone up to the line currently isn't on laps. We are just waiting for the Alpha Tauri, who invalidated, to come around, and then the Haas of Procan, the Williams of Procan, who made some form of mistake and hit the McLaren of Mitwi. So here's your qualifying order heading into the sprint race, and there's places to be made up by the Red Bull of Ger 13, who again falls short of his teammate by a pretty clear margin of just over half a second. And the Mercedes of DJ Perks will probably not be happy with his qualifying either, down in P9. But notable good performances definitely from the two Alpha Tauris filling in, and the Mercedes driver Oero to put it on the second row alongside Jack Ledford is pretty impressive heading into the sprint race. It would just be hoping that there's no major issue in the sprint race that knocks them completely down the grid for the normal race. So there are your you'll have to bear with me as I need to. How do can I invite someone from this? I don't think I can, you know. Maybe I just need to invite someone who missed qualifying. So you will have to give me a second. So I can only invite him through Xbox, which you'll just have to deal with because I couldn't invite him through the game itself, being a spectator. So he will start from the back of the grid. This is the other Aston Martin. So I personally am expecting a pretty easy W for Shuey. However, it is a sprint race, and it is the San Marino / Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. So you never know, and there could definitely be antics into Tamburello, and we could definitely see some people just deciding the gravel's the best place to go. Well, just people deciding that the gravel is the place they're going to go. As we wait for the formation lap to take place. And here we are then. On your formation lap, immediately the Alfa Romeo of Sir with Face deciding to take the MotoGP layout of this track off the start. And personally, no surprise, it's the Haas in last. As here we have your predictive strategies of a zero stop because of this sprint race. And ooh, that's a bit sketchy from the Ferrari and the Red Bull. Definitely lighting the tyres up at the exit of Villeneuve chicane. So I believe everyone should be on mediums. I don't see why they would be on hards, but we will check. And yep, everyone is on the mediums. So obviously with the sprint race, it's a bit of a boring... It can be a bit of a boring race if people decide there's absolutely... a bit of a contact between the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Putting them on the grid with cold tyres, that is a big shame for the two of them. But it's a bit of a shame when drivers decide that there's too much to lose by going for positions, as there's more contact involving the other Mercedes driver and the second McLaren driver of High 101, and they're also set back to the starting grid with cold tyres. And that is a menacing sight if I've ever seen one. Red Bull, Alpha Tauri, Red Bull. Obviously that is not the starting order because of the two who got reset to track between them. But as a member of the Mercedes Academy myself, that is not something I really want to have to look at. as a couple of people, notably the Red Bull of Jer, missing their pit box, and the McLaren of Mitwee also not lining up correctly, along with the Alpine of Sheehan. Everyone else getting a pretty decent slot. Someone is very, very extremely off to the left there as we go to 5 red lights. And we are underway, and and as we get off the line, there's the worst camera angle you've ever seen. But here we go, and there's pretty much as we were into turn 1 at the top, but down the field there's a big incident into turn 1. Just people getting tangled together, and immediately there's massive lost ground for the Mercedes of DJ Perks, and massive gained ground for the Alfa Romeo of Sir Face, as we see the Haas of Matt Copper around the Villeneuve chicane already. But out front, it's pretty much standard, apart from Bram, the second AlphaTauri driver, having dropped down to P9 at turn 1. So here we are again. Shui already with a 8/10 gap to the car behind. And further back we see the AlphaTauri pressuring the Alfa Romeo into Ravazza. And he could look to make a move at the end of the straight. There's no DRS at this point, but with slipstream alone and a decent exit that he has got, he's got the position. And he's almost got the position, and he's not even halfway down the straight yet. But then he just, into turn 1, he's already a mile ahead, and there's already a retirement. There's a retirement from the Mercedes. What's happened there? That is a humongous shame. I'm not quite sure what's happened, but there's big movement around the field as there's an incident off the exit of Tosa, and yet again the orders just shook up immediately, and there's the Haas around again. Surprise, surprise. And I'm quite lost for words. There's the AlphaTauri who started very high up, suddenly very low down. And there's the Ferrari having started pretty much at the back of the grid, now very much at the front of the grid. As we are still green flag running. And Shui already has gapped DRS. A 5-second penalty for the Alfa Romeo, and he's retired already. So there's already retirements in the sprint race, which could completely knock down the runners for the normal race, as you saw Oero retiring and leaving immediately. So that is a big shame for his race overall and for the Mercedes camp. But there's Sheehan going a little bit wide out of Tosa, and is now he's under pressure from Turbo Man behind as they head down into Aquamineral. A lot of curb on the entry, no curb on the exit from the Alpine, and he's still got the Aston Martin right behind him. Will he look to send down the inside? He doesn't, but there's still even more curb from the Alpine. He's really having at track limits right there to keep these positions. But already there's a pretty standard gap between everybody, apart from Mitwee and Jer. And then, Turbo Man does send it, gets it done before the braking zone, and the Alpine almost outbrakes himself, and he's going to be in a really bad position going into the next straight, and it's going to be immediately under pressure from DJ Perks. Is he close enough to make a move into the Villeneuve chicane? He is not, but he's going to have the Alpine in his sights, and he's definitely going to capitalise on any mistake the Alpine makes. There's a little bit of a sketchy exit from the Mercedes, and that's the Williams of Super Mario, who's in AI, and the Williams behind him of Procar having not moved off the start as net movement, but I don't know if he'll be happy having not moved with two people who started, I think, ahead of him already being out of the session. As further up the field, we have a spinner, DJ Perks at Variante Alta, and it's even more heartbreak for the Mercedes camp. Do you think it couldn't really get too much worse? And it just immediately does. And here is the Aston Martin, the second Aston Martin driver of Sunrise. Well, I don't know if he'll be able to take part in the feature race. I'm not quite sure how that works, but we will see, as Jack Ledford now within DRS of the AlphaTauri of Keith de Jong, and will look to put pressure on, and Mitwee still within DRS of Jer and hasn't really been causing him too much problem, as that is a bit wide from Jer, and that's surely, and oh no, de Jong's lost it. De Jong must have taken too much curb out of Aqua Mineral, and he's down to P6, and now Jack Ledford in the Ferrari can chase after Shuey, who's 2.3 seconds up the road already. That's very wide from the Alpine out of Variante Alta, as this is a very, very difficult track for drivers to get right, and you can see by the fact that the AlphaTauris they're clearly not, the fact that they haven't raced in the first two races of the season, and we have another spinner, the Aston Martin of Turbo Man, on the exit of Ravazza 2. So it's just all kicking off in a race that I thought maybe wouldn't kick off, as Bram makes up another position on Procar. And Keith de Jong also looked at, and there's more yellows, as that's the Merc again with now no front wing, off into the gravel. When you say it can't get worse, and then it gets worse, and then you say, well, it's got worse, and it gets even worse. It's a big problem, I think, for the Mercedes team. But Jack Ledford, hang on a minute. Is Shuey coasting? Has he got a problem? Because Jack Ledford's pulled almost a second on this lap. Jack Ledford is absolutely motoring. And Jer's not really being able to keep up his pace. There's a 3-second penalty for the Mercedes. It's getting even worse for the Mercedes of DJ Perks, as de Jong now with DRS down the straight. He's got Joel GP in his sights. The Ferrari will defend to the inside, try and force the AlphaTauri the long way around, and then shuts the door, and there was no room for the AlphaTauri to make the move, and he'll probably have to go again next lap. Or if he can get a good enough exit, he might be able to pose a problem into Villeneuve chicane, and he's not going to send it there because it's not going to work. And he's just going to have to stick behind him, heading through Tosa, and then further down the lap. As more yellows in Sector 3, as DJ just puts himself out of the misery and retires the car in the pit lane. But we have another spinner, I believe, and there's, yeah, it's the Alpine of Sheehan now out of Tosa and again, and that's a reset to track, caught immediately on stream. He's going to get penalised for that one, I think. And the Haas of Matt Copper, very much the tortoise in this race, is still last, but is picking up the odd position from DNFs. And there's the Ferrari having his pocket picked by de Jong at Ravazza. But he will get DRS though, and he's gonna look to the inside, has to go to the outside because there's no room, and there's contact but he forces his way through, goes a little bit wide. The AlphaTauri will get a better exit, and he's almost pushing him down this second straight. Oh, and they've collided, and there's a massive crash, and there's the Ferrari out of the session, and the AlphaTauri is still going, but he comes out in the way of his AlphaTauri teammate, and we have a safety car, and he spins. So yeah, very, very, very hot tyres from that collision. I don't know who was to fault there, really. It looked like there was a bit of room and then there wasn't room, and he's just a bit unlucky. And the two of them are unlucky. But if anything, the AlphaTauri is then lucky to still be running in this race. And somehow Jack Ledford, within half a second or so of the race leader, and I'm not quite sure where he's pulling this pace from, because the Ferrari man is absolutely motoring in green flag conditions. But now we have a safety car. It could be a chance for, if people maybe wanted to be absolute daredevils and pit for softs with 3 laps to go. Well, 2 laps to go. And that's Shuey. Shuey's off. Is that Shuey? Or is that... No. What's gone on there then? Jack was off, but Shuey was also off. Was that Delta issues? Because Jer's now up to P2 under safety car, which is very confusing. And Mitwee pits, so he's going to come out presumably on softs, and he's going to have a very, very interesting maybe lap or 2 laps at the end of this race, as the Haas of Matt Copper also pits. But that's... I'm baffled by what's gone on at turn 1 there, because it looked like maybe there was a Delta problem with the Ferrari, and he's had to slow down, and then just... Shuey looked slow. I thought, oh, Shuey must have made a mistake because he's off on the grass. And then suddenly, no. Jack's not overtaken him. And Jer's overtaken Jack. So that's pretty... No, I do not know. But it doesn't look like the Haas is going to get round at all in time, as the safety car is in this lap. We will get a lap or 2 of running, 2 laps of running, as the Haas is just... No, he's got no chance really, has he? Poor lad. So Shuey with control of the pack, heading around the last corner. He's got his teammate behind him, and then he's got a bunch of non-friendly drivers behind them. As there we go, he puts his foot down. Jer doesn't get a jump on him at all, and behind them, Jack Ledford in a bit of trouble. And there's a move up the inside by the AlphaTauri, makes contact with the McLaren, and then almost loses the back end. That's the McLaren round. And we have even more carnage at turn 1. And there's the Aston Martin losing a place, and there's a spinner. De Jong off into the wall, somehow now with no front wing, but still in this race. That Aston Martin must be made out of some durable material to not have just lost a wheel there, because trust me, this happens. It happens a lot where you can lose a wheel from the most silly punts of all. But Shuey already with half a second. Well, I say already with half a second gap. He's just ahead of Jer. Jer's sticking with him. And is that that's a 3-second penalty for track limits for the McLaren of Mitwee. And the Williams of Procar up into P4 as Mitwee looks to send it round the outside of Bram into Ravazza 1. And Bram with a little bit of a hairy exit, followed by the Aston behind him, also getting a bit twitchy out of the second Ravazza. Down the straight, we have Bram with Turbo Man directly behind him. Turbo Man looked out of this race before the safety car, but he could look to the inside. There's no room, and he just sits behind. And onto this last lap, we have more yellows in sector 1. Jack Ledford has hit the wall. He's dropped it on the exit of Tamburello, and Jack Ledford will be starting from P12 in the feature race, because that is an absolute shocker. I frankly cannot believe it. And what I can't believe and what I also can't believe is the fact... actually. Having said that, what I also can't believe is the... Williams is in P3. The Williams immediately down to P8 after that mistake. And, there's a ding-dong battle, and there's the Alpine round at Variante Alta. And he's still round at Variante Alta. But he'll get going again ahead of a couple of runners who've also spun. As Shuey up to the line takes the sprint race win. And his teammate Jer will take the sprint race second place, followed by Bram. So it is a complete Red Bull Academy sprint race lockout. With the Aston in P4, the Williams in P5, Mitwee and Procar in P6 and 7. Sheehan up to the line will take P8, followed by the McLaren of High in P9. And I think it was maybe Keith de Jong with no front wing in P10. That was quite the sprint race. That really was quite the sprint race. My goodness. We have a lot of Dutch drivers in this league as well, I noticed. A proportionately large amount of Dutch drivers. So this is your sprint result. A bunch of drivers not making the finish line in one piece. Not making the finish line at all. Matt Copper eventually making the finish line, meaning that he'll start in P11. And then up the grid, Shuey still P1. And it didn't really look like anyone was ever going to take it from him. Apart from that interesting, shall we say, incident at Turn 1 with what I presume is Delta and Jack Ledford. So here we are for the second formation lap. And wait a minute. So we have a bit of an issue with the Williams of Super Mario, who's going to start in P4, even though it was his he's not going to get points for the sprint race, but he may get points for the real race since he's had to leave now, but will be in the race. So he will be taking part, I believe, in the feature race. But then I don't understand why Shuey's in P6. I don't understand it at all. Did he have a grid penalty from qualifying? Nevertheless, there's the Williams driver back in the race. And there is the quote-unquote other Red Bull on pole. And I was not expecting that. Let's have a very brief look down the grid at who doesn't exist. We have the Mercedes of Oero, doesn't exist. And that looks about it. So, did Super Mario get his car back? It looks like he has. Maybe? No, it doesn't look like he has yet. Shui's left. What's going on? Jer missed his pit box, I think. It's all going wrong. It doesn't make any sense. And I really don't understand. So if you're confused, I don't think there's a lot I can say to help you. Shui's joined. There's the Aston Martin of Sunrise deciding he wants to start from in the pit wall instead of in his pit box. Oero's completely left the server. I'm not quite sure why. So we go to 5 red lights. And we are underway. And there's already contact off the start. As... Ooh, even more contact as there's... Further down the field, people jostling for position. The Haas of Super Mario... Oh, there's... The Williams is round at turn 1. And the other Williams is DNF. So that's absolutely awful for Williams. I can't believe it. Oh. And we already have a safety car of some description. It's just a virtual one. But, oh man. What's gone on there? I'm not even sure what happened to Brocan. I can't believe that. Alright. Impartial mode. Come on. Commentate mode. Happy mode. Right. So, Jer still P1 after turn 1. Did well to keep P1. Shui up to P5 again. And this race is kind of... It's just gone mad. And we have Toastman running when he's not meant to be running, which is quite funny. Jack Ledford at one point behind a lap runner. Super Mario is retired as well. And Toast will retire as well. So it's all gone awfully wrong for Williams. And we have De Jong still takes the position off of Shui. So although they are the Red Bull team, they really are not willing to do any team orders like cross academy orders and let drivers through. As I said, wide from Shui, and Joel maybe looking to the inside as they and he makes it around the outside going into Accra Mineral. That is an impressive move from Joel GP. And further down we see Sunrises around Accra Mineral. And through Variante Alta, ooh, a little bit sketchy from the Alfa Romeo, and he's immediately under pressure from DJ Perks. DJ Perks looking to send it down the inside at Ravazza 1. He just hasn't got the speed, and the door is slammed shut. But then the Alfa Romeo goes very deep, and the door is then wide open again. And DJ gets positioned, but gets boxed in, and kind of pushed at the same time by the Haas of Matt Copper. So it's 3 wide down the straight. All of them chasing Shui, and Shui doesn't have DR. No one has DRS by the looks of it. And there is somehow, the Alfa Romeo goes straight on at turn 1. And somehow there's no major incident at turn 1. As there's the Alfa Romeo slowing down for some unexplainable reason. But Jack Ledford down to 14th. As we have more yellows in sector 2. And Jer has a second gap to the Alpha Tauri of Bram. And Bram has not much of a gap to the Aston Martin of Turbo Man in P3. So it's just, I don't know. I'm kind of lost for words at this point, because Shuey's down in P8, completely lost out from the antics down the straight and into Tamburello, as Jack Ledford is now back in P1 for some unexplainable reason, and then immediately back down to P14 again. And yeah, we have a spinner, the Ferrari of Joel, losing it out of Villeneuve chicane and losing it a bit more as he tries to get going quickly. As we have more yellows, as I think that's the Ferrari of Joel struggling with very warm tyres. Jer now with a 1.5 second gap. Bram now with a 3/10 gap. So clearly Bram isn't on the pace of Jer, but Turbo Man just might be, and is being held up by the Alpha Tauri. As we have more yellows, as there's a Ferrari, I think. Yeah, it's Joel still. But there's a bit of an awful exit from the Aston out of Ravazza 2. It's going to hinder his run on the Alpha Tauri, but he's looking round the outside. He gets it done before the braking zone, and the Alpha Tauri doesn't look to send it back again. And that is a pretty nice move up into P3 for Turbo Man. And they might just settle in at this point for the long haul, because they don't really want to make any mistakes that could cost their race. Because this is where it's very crucial, and we've already had both of the Williams suffer from it. It's turn 1, and the first good couple of laps can really make or break your race. As we go on board into Aqua Mineral with Turbo Man, as you can see Jer up the road, he's immediately taken a chunk out of Jer's advantage. So Bram just clearly doesn't have the race pace, and Mitwee is already within a second of him and could look to pick him off going into out of Ravazza and down the straight. So further down the field we have both the Ferraris in last and second last, although at this point we never know, because at one point Jack was P1 again, and Turbo Man not close enough into turn 1. As soon as I say it, Jack's P1 again. I don't know, this game is so broken sometimes. But more yellows in sector 1, as that is the McLaren round, and they've retired. So Jack is now back down to P14 again, as you would expect. Eking out his advantage once again on Turbo Man. It dropped to 1.2, it's gone back up to 1.4 or so. So he clearly has the pace, he just didn't feel like he needed to use all of it to keep Bram behind, when Bram was just not on his level in the beginning of this race. Shuey's still in P6, and he is running, which is a very interesting thing, because he's 3.6 seconds off the back of the Alpha Tauri of Keith de Jong, and he doesn't look like gaining really. Jack back up into P1, because that's definitely how it works. And I mean, he is gaining-ish. Well, actually, not really. So Shui, your championship leader, is, well, how do I put this? Having a mare. And there aren't any real fights going on, as we have yellows in sector 1 and 2. As something happened with regarding the Aston Martin and the Ferrari. The AlphaTauri definitely not close enough to make a move, but is still putting the pressure on the Turbo Man in P2. And now we see Shui gain a second on that gap to the AlphaTauri. And we see Jack Ledford pitting for some reason, even though he's not actually pitting. And also in P1 for some reason, even though he's not actually in P1. So I'm not quite sure what to make of any of this really. But either way, Jack Ledford's there and he's going very slowly. And he isn't in the pits. Even though the game believes he is. So Bram has DRS. And he's definitely not going to get close enough again. But Keith de Jong now is within half a second of Mitsui. And he has Shui now within 2 and a bit seconds of him. So Shui does have some pace. But he's clearly suffering from the I'm not running at the front, so I can't actually be fast syndrome that we had with Lewis Hamilton when we have an Alfa Romeo out of the race. So is there going to be a safety car or a VSC? As that fence made it look like it was raining for a second. And again, Jack Ledford's apparently P1, which isn't. The AlphaTauri of Bram now very, very close to the Aston Martin. And I'm very confused because we have a problem with Jack Ledford and desync. Because apparently he may well be as high as he is. It's just a bit. No. I'm absolutely lost. Just lost. More yellows as the Aston Martin of Sunrise has a bit of a problem in Sector 1. And Bram isn't close enough to make a move, but Matt Copper into turn 1 is close enough to make a move on Sheehan, and he gets it done before turn 1. If he can get a good exit out of Tamburello, he's going to... He does keep the position. So we see the tortoise turn into the hare for a second, as he gets another 3-second penalty. So, but Jer now with a 3.3 second gap. If Jer brings this home, then, well, he's definitely going to bridge the gap to his teammate. But we see Mitwe got jumped by both De Jong and Shuey. Shuey now within half a second of De Jong, but Shuey with a big snap on the exit of that chicane. Imola is a beautiful track for just its chicanes. And he will get DRS down the straight. Is he going to make a move? Is he going to get done before the braking zone? He just might do, and he just has. As more yellows in Sector 1, as that is... Jer maybe? Jer's made a mistake and dropped behind the AlphaTauri of Bram, and Turbo Man's made a mistake and dropped down to P7, so maybe Turbo Man just... I don't know. No, it can't have been an incident between the two of them. But Bram is now in P1, followed by Jer, Shuey, and then AlphaTauri. So there is my worst nightmare of AlphaTauri, Red Bull, AlphaTauri. Followed by Mitwe in P5, DJ P6, Matt Copper in P7, and then Sheehan in P8. Jack Ledford finally retiring and giving up on the desync issues he had. As De Jong, within half a second of Shuey, could look to get this position back on this straight, because he's stayed with him the whole lap. And we have more yellows in Sector 1, which I'm not quite sure what they're for. Is that Jack Ledford retiring? Is that why there's yellows? I don't know. As the Aston Martin of Turbo Man pits. So, in one fell swoop, the only driver who was really contesting the Red Bull Academy has just dropped all the way down to P11. And we see Sheehan possibly looking to make a move on the Haas, which is about as slow as if Gene Haas ran the circuit himself. And that was a bit of a wide exit from the Alpine, but he's going to get a good run into Ravazza, and if he doesn't make a move here, but he gets a good enough exit, he's definitely going to pose the Haas a problem down this straight. As De Jong into turn 1 doesn't get a move done on Shuey, but with both of these having DRS, it's going to be difficult for Alpine to get by. Looks to the outside, door is shut, and there's no opportunity. Very well defended by the moving chicane. De Jong doing a stellar job to stay as close to Shuey as he is. And I may have to just keep him in mind, as, you know, Mr. Team Principal that I am. Which I don't even know if I can legally. If he's a reserve, I can, you know, approach him with a main seat offer. I mean, my current main driver has missed every race, I think. One through not being able to go. One through everyone being annoying and not letting him in the lobby. And then this one from not existing in the... or just not joining. Shoey boxes, along with the moving chicane and the Fernando Alonso wannabe. And the AI of Oero. So De Jong now, without any DRS aid, is just going to have to catch up to Jer if he wishes to stay with this leading pack. Because he hasn't got Shoei to tow him along anymore. And we have only 12 runners, 2 of which I believe are AI. I mean, maybe even 3. Joel might be AI. We have yellows in sector 2 and 3. As... who is that? Oh, it's DJ. It is DJ. That's just a big enough gap that I didn't notice. That's definitely a reset to track. Sorry about that, mate, but might have to say about that one. But he has no front wing, and Jer boxes promotes Mitwee up to P3 as it stands. Of course, net P6 maybe, depending on how the rest of the pits pan out. But currently we have a probably quite nice looking AlphaTauri 1-2 for any AlphaTauri fans. As, ooh, someone spun. Who was that? I don't know, I just saw something. DJ boxes after his little incident. Sheehan with a 5-second gap to Matt Copper. So Matt Copper clearly cold tyres. Just might as well be going backwards. Shui has gained on Jer and gets very close to him through Aqua Mineral and up into Variante Alta, again getting quite close to the back of him, and we could just possibly see some team orders if Shui's faster, which it looks like he is, or even an Otmar Zafnauer let them race, because he's probably been on some glue that he brings to the team. And so Shu will get DRS, Jer will get none, and they are side by side, as that is a very stupid camera shot. And there goes Shui into P3 before the braking zone. That's a pretty standard move, but he gets it done nicely, and he can now aim to make the time up on Bram and possibly be back for a net P1 and an overall P1. Another penalty for Sunrise, who is actually still racing along with Joel. I thought them two weren't racing. And DJ is still also racing, Oro's not. Just sticking with his teammate quite well. Not as well as Keith de Jong was, but he's still within a second, and he'll still get the benefit of DRS down the straight. And he could get a nice enough slipstream. And he hasn't dropped off either, so it seems that maybe this is a Red Bull towing Red Bull. Push, push, we can make sure this could be a Red Bull one too, and not a Red Bull Alpha Tauri mix up. Because they're going to want to try and undercut Keith de Jong and undercut Verbram. As Verbram into the pits and Keith de Jong forced to go again to deny, well, to have to not double stack. As Keith de Jong with a pretty nice turn in, a pretty good pit, but then that was, I'm not even going to question it, that is just good game, EA, good game. As down the straight, Shui and Jer go. Bram out of the pits now, and in all fairness, the two Red Bulls were almost no way near, but then into the braking zone for Tamburello. They're right there, and Bram's going to have trouble heating his tyres up, and Shui is right on the back of him. No move into Villeneuve chicane, but he's right on the back of him, and he could force an error into Tosa and maybe get the position by the end of this lap. As the Alpha... Ooh, I would have expected the Alpha Tauri to maybe have a bit of oversteer, but it was Shui just got a little bit of a snap, and Jer behind him also hoping that something happens and he can get a very clean overtake. But Shui into Aqua Mineral, still right on the back of the Alpha Tauri, who might now have his tyres up to a good working temperature. There's no move for the Red Bull into Variante Alta, and oh, he's round, and Shui is round, and that's allowed the McLaren of Mitwe through, and Jer's now going to have to apply the pressure to Bram because Shui makes a very uncharacteristic mistake on the exit of Variante Alta, and he's just dropped it. De Jong pits and immediately loses position to both Bram and Jer. Well, I say that comes out and immediately loses the position. There was no like fight like there was with Bram. But Jer didn't get any move done on Bram, and isn't looking like he's gaining. And if De Jong can get these tyres up to temperature and get that race pace back that he had, I mean, an AlphaTauri 1-2 may not be quite so strange. De Jong with DRS on Jer. Jer out of DRS of Bram. Yellows in sector 1 for... I'm not quite sure who. I think it's Sunrise again. Could end up getting in the way of this fight. I don't know if ghosting's on or not. I would assume it is. Yeah, it looks like it is. And Keith de Jong up the inside at top. Sir? He gets the move done, and we have an AlphaTauri 1-2 with 11 laps to go, or well, there or thereabouts. And if Keith de Jong this pace, he could end up maybe putting pressure on his teammate Bram, and he could even fight for a race win here. Yellows in sector 2, as I'm not quite sure what that was. 4 anyway. But either way, Shui 2.6 seconds back from McLaren of Mitwe. And he's just chasing, hoping for some kind of mistake to pick up some more positions. But sticking with De Jong for now, but didn't quite get the Villeneuve chicane right. And has dropped out of DRS, heading through Tosa. And now there's not really much interesting battles going on. Everyone's with a pretty decent gap between them, with the exception of maybe Jer, you could say. De Jong, 3-second penalty for track limits. That is going to absolutely he's going to be absolutely bricking it in that cockpit, because he's now got to pull a 3-second gap on Jer, which he's quite capable of doing if he keeps his pace up. But he's now got the pressure to need to do so, as opposed to just coasting with a nice 2-second gap. As he sets the fastest lap on the race, Sheehan follows it with a 3-second penalty. Again, for track limits, again. So De Jong is looking very, very fearsome in this AlphaTauri car. And Bram is just looking very, very consistent out front in the other AlphaTauri. And AlphaTauri 1-2 is definitely not what I would have put my money on. Especially with Shuey down in P5, off of the podium. Not only the first race of the season he's probably not going to win, the first race of the season he probably might end up not getting on the podium for. But Jer has dropped 2.2 seconds off the back of Keith de Jong now. So that 3-second gap that Keith de Jong needed, he has really put in the work in to get that gap and to ensure he at least keeps his P2. And all that means really is that the gaps between drivers is even more boring. Although Turbo Man looking like he's close to the back of Sheehan 101. Now within a second, as Sheehan heads into Ravazza and the Aston Martin follows him. If the Aston Martin gets a good enough exit, he could, with DRS, pose a threat to the Alpine into turn 1. The Alpine possibly using ERS to maintain his gap, but the Aston Martin's bearing down on him, but then the gaps between the two of them just seemed to be so much smaller than it actually ended up being. And we have yellows in sector 1 for Matt Coppo, who's spun and lost the position to both Mercedes, even though one of them's been AI all race, so it won't count. But Turbo Man is keeping with Sheehan, and as they head through Aqua Mineral and up to Variante Alta, he has still got a decent advantage, as Sheehan again deciding that the track was a couple of feet to the right instead of where the track actually was. And I don't know if you get penalised for that, but you can definitely carry more momentum by doing that. And he might need more momentum at this point because he doesn't get the exit that he really, really needed out of Ravazza 2. And down the straight, the Aston Martin is absolutely sending one to the outside, and he gets it done before the braking zone. As this has become quite a standard move nowadays, like at this point in the race. It's definitely not any less impressive when you see it done. And De Jong up top is now half a second behind his teammate for the race lead. And of course the last thing you want to see as Joel GP retires, I think he lost it on exit of... Ooh, he's lost it on the exit of... Wait, maybe not. Maybe he's just spun and then decided to retire. But the last thing you want is to make contact with your teammate when you're fighting with your teammate, and especially when you're fighting with your teammate for the race lead. And heading into Tamburello, he's almost done just that, as we have a 3-second penalty for track limits for DJ Perks. And into Villeneuve chicane, there's just an AlphaTauri train. It's a 2-carriage AlphaTauri train at the front of this race. 4 seconds back is the Red Bull of Jer 13. And Shui just doesn't have the pace to close the gap to Mitwi in 4th. So, ooh, yellows, Jer's made a mistake. Jer is round. He's lost the back end on the exit of Tosa. And Jer is off the podium. And that's promoted the McLaren of Mitwi onto the podium. More yellows in Sector 2 as Jer's going slowly again. With very, very, very hot tyres at this point. And it's heartbreak for the Red Bull team, as we see the AlphaTauri team down the main straight. De Jong with DRS on Bram. He's going to have ERS to help him. Oh, he's not using his ERS though. And into turn 1 again. Pretty standard at this point, but no less spectacular. He's just gone around the outside before the braking zone. And now De Jong has P1, but with a 3-second penalty. All Bram has to do is stay within DRS for a couple of laps and then maybe drop out if he really has to. But ooh, a little bit sketchy from Bram on the exit of Tosa. But he doesn't really have to sweat it. Oh, that's De Jong. De Jong is round. And De Jong is going to lose first position to his teammate. He's going to lose second position to Mitwi. And he might just lose the podium to Shui. Shui is back on the podium. In an absolutely unthinkable turn of events. It's remarkable that Shui's on the podium in this race. At one point you'd be thinking, 5-second penalty for ignoring yellow flags for Shui. That is an interesting one, considering the yellow flags were because the car in front of him going slowly. Of course he's going to overtake that car that's going slowly. So, I don't know about that one. That'll probably get removed. De Jong is going to look to make this place back, which he showed he had the pace to. But when it came down to it, he's just lost the car and made a mistake in a very vital moment where he just got the race lead off his teammate. De Jong looking to make his newer mediums work against Shui's worn hards. And he really might do that. As heading into a Vatsa, 6.5 tenths back, 7 tenths back, I guess. If he gets a good enough exit, the two Honda powered cars could have a proper Honda powered drag race down to the turn 1, but one of them will be assisted by some DRS, and he just isn't going to get close enough as Keith de Jong, and he's going to have to try and stick to the back of Shui and go again. Just see if he gets a bit closer this time. De Jong has definitely kept with Shuey. He's almost pushing him through Ravazza 1 or Ravazza 2. And he gets a little bit of oversteer on the exit, but he's going to be right behind him as he gets DRS. And he is much closer this lap. But Shuey still has the ERS to fight back. And there's no move for De Jong at turn 1. There's no opportunity. And Mitwi just hoping to keep P2 for the McLaren team. That would be an enormous result for McLaren. As that McLaren car always just looks infinitely dirty for some reason. It happened with High in qualifying. Sunrise with even more penalties. The track limits. Yellows in sector 2. It's the Gene Haasmobile around at Tosa. And through Ravazza, Keith de Jong has lost a little bit, but he's got a decent exit. And 4 temps back with DRS again. Shuey surely can't just hold out every lap, and he looks to the inside. Shuey defends the outside line. De Jong down the inside, gets the move done under braking. That is a spectacular move from the AlphaTauri driver. Now he just needs to pull a 3-second gap in 2 laps or so, which I don't think he's really going to do. So Shuey was probably wise to not fight that and risk any collision. Because out front, 7.7 seconds ahead of second place, Bram is going to bring home the win for the AlphaTauri team. Mitwi P2 as it stands, and Shuey's going to finish P3 because of De Jong's 3-second penalty, assuming Shuey's gets removed for game problem. Because let's be honest, it was probably a game problem. So here we are through Ravazza, and on to the last lap. De Jong is now 1.2 off the back of the McLaren, but he's not going to get close enough to hamper the McLaren, I reckon. And he's definitely not going to get far away enough to clear a 3-second gap to Felix Shuey. And all Bram has to do at this point is just bring the AlphaTauri home. As long as he keeps it in a straight line for the rest of the lap, he's going to bring home a very well-deserved P1. But De Jong, now within a second of the McLaren possibly under pressure. He's got to get Variant to outer right. And it looks like they all get through there pretty smoothly. But De Jong, maybe a massively out of order move into Ravazza 1. No mistakes through Ravazza 1. No mistakes through Ravazza 2. Although De Jong didn't really hit the apex the way he might have liked. And over the line, Bram P1, Mitwi P2. De Jong P3, but down to P4 if Shuey's penalty gets removed. Jer will cross the line to be P5, followed by Turbo Man as he goes through Ravazza 1 and 2 now. Sheehan has 9 seconds of penalties, but Oera's AI is over 9 seconds back, and Matt Copper's over 9 seconds back, and Matt Copper has 6-second penalties himself. The other 2 cars are lap runners, so we're just waiting for Oera's AI and Matt Copper to come round to Ravazza's and across the line as he wiggles and yeets. And there you have it. it was surprising that the driver to beat Shuey to to a race win, the first driver to win a race that wasn't Shuey this season, it wasn't Jack Ledford, it wasn't Shuey's teammate Chur, it wasn't Lando or Toast in the AlphaTauris, it was one of the Red Bull Academy reserves filling in for AlphaTauri, who the brings home P1 and will stand atop the podium in a podium that is it's an AlphaTauri 1-3 with McLaren P2. So there are your results. AlphaTauri P1, McLaren P2, Red Bull P3, Red Bull P4 overall this weekend, including the sprint results. So there's your sprint results. There's the sprint results you had earlier, and then the race sugar. It's fine. So there we have it. Round 3 is over.